you love to golf or are close to someone who does, then you know just how addicting the sport can be. In his book, SweetSpot, Confessions of a Golfaholic, John O'Hearn tells the tale of an obsessed golfer who will stop at nothing for the perfect swing. John O'Hearn is an accomplished actor, writer, and avid golfer and joins me now. Isn't every golfer a little bit obsessed, John? Doesn't it get that way?
Yes. Anybody who's ever hit a really good flush golf shot is hooked for the rest of their lives. I don't care what happens.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen my dad for about 8 years.
Well, there's a reason for that.
Let's talk a little bit about the book. Why did you write this?
I wrote it, well, I'm an actor and a writer, and I found myself getting hooked to golf, and I thought, I started behaving like a person who had a real compulsion disorder. I was sneaking out. I tell my wife I was going to the hardware store, but I was actually going to hit a bucket of balls. I'm going to get milk, but I'm going to go hit a bucket of balls. And I thought that was kind of funny. And then I began...
Well, for you, maybe not your wife.
Well, precisely, precisely. And then I started noticing that we'd go shopping, and all of these other golfers would see me in the supermarket, and they would nod, or they would do a little gesture. And after a while, my wife would go, "Let me guess, golfer." And it became funnier and funnier, and pretty soon I realized that I actually had created over the years an entire community of people totally outside of my family that they knew nothing about.
Wow.
So it was sort of like I had another family.
Your golf family.
My
your
golf family.
buddies.
And I thought,
it.
you know, there's a story there. And that's what got me.
Originally it was a play, correct?
It was a play. We produced the play, did it in Bridgeport, and the golfer audiences howled. Now, the funny part of that story was I did it with another actress. Neither the actress or the director knew anything about golf.
Really?
So while we were rehearsing the play, they kept going, "Is this funny? Is this going to be funny?" Trust me.
Sure.
It's going to be funny. And sure enough, we would do it, and then they would look at me from the wings going, "Oh my God."
Quite a reaction,
this is
right?
very
Because
funny.
people can relate. I'm just
People
the
can
stories
relate.
you're telling me, I could relate. My fiance probably plays 4 days a week.
Have you read the book?
Bits and pieces of it.
You're going to need it.
I'm going to need it. Let's talk about some of the characters in the book.
All right, well, there's Tom. He's the addicted golfer.
Okay.
He's just a regular Joe who loves his family, his wife and his kids, but he becomes obsessed, and he begins to drift away from that family unit more and more. Then there's Carol, his wife. The story is basically told from Tom's perspective in one chapter, her perspective in the next, as things get progressively worse. Then there's the foursome that he plays with. One is a gynecologist, one is a priest, one is a plumber.
That sounds like a setup for a story right there.
There's a broad spectrum there. And then there are the wives of the other golfers that come into play. And finally, there is the ghost of Ben Hogan. Tom believes that he's channeling his spirit.
Is that right?
Well, it's one of those signature signs of addiction where we get this little man who lives on our shoulder, and he whispers bad things in our ear all day long. And
I see.
That
leads to a trip to the golf course.
That
most of the time.
All the time.
Now let me ask you, why is this sport so obsessive? Do you think?
Well, I've given that a lot of thought.
All right, give me the short answer then,
and
I
I
suppose.
firmly believe that it's because a really solid golf shot, really flush, right on the screws, just the way it was meant to be, feels so good.
Okay.
It feels so good. It's like hitting a home run. I imagine hitting a home run in Yankee Stadium feels really good. Well, that's what a 250-yard drive off of tee right down the fairway feels like. And you get to do it all day long. And that's the pleasure of it. It's just a pure physical, sensual pleasure. And if you go to a driving range, you'll watch people try to do it over and over and over again. They're just in search of that one really good swing.
Do you think, though, 36 holes in one day is a bit much?
No.
Not at all?
No, people do it all the time.
Okay.
Usually they have to lie about where they've been when they come back, but 36 is definitely doable.
All right. Before you wrote the book, let's talk a little bit about your life. Pretty interesting stuff you've been doing.
Yeah. I went to New York after graduate school, became an actor, did some off-Broadway plays, some commercials. Then my wife got pregnant, and she had a big corporate job in the city. So we decided that it would be best if I stayed home and with the baby, and she went back to work. And that's when I started to write. The babies in the first year, what they do mostly is sleep.
Okay.
And So when he was sleeping, I'd start writing. The first thing I wrote was a story about my wife's pregnancy. That, too, I found funny.
You did.
Well, it was from a man's point of view, like when she came home and said, I want to give birth, but I don't want to have any drugs because I want it to be all natural. I went, that's really funny. And so I wrote a one-man show about that.
Got it.
And that was that. And during that time period is when I actually became hooked on golf.
All right, so I also understand that you've created a monologue based on the book.
I have. As I try to promote the book, every book needs sort of a platform from
Sure.
which you're going to try to promote it. So I put together a sort of a 20, 25-minute comic monologue about golf, which is a little difficult because you have to do it. You're taking it to golf courses in places that are...
Oh, that's where you're kind of performing
That's
this?
where I
Okay.
perform it, and they're fairly staid places. So you have to sort of keep the language sweet and calm. You don't want to scare anybody. But golf, actually, when you're out on the golf course,
It's a free-for-all, is it not?
it's a free-for-all. So writing that monologue has been difficult. It's to keep it within...
Keep it clean. Got it.
Keep it clean.
I got to ask you, is it customary to have a cocktail at the end of a round of golf, or I'm just falling for it?
No, it is customary.
It is.
You need it, actually.
Is that right?
It's a very emotional up and down experience, golf.
All right.
Some holes are good, some are really bad. And the
And every
bad
day is
ones,
a little different, right?
the bad ones you need to forget.
Got it. All right, where can we find your book, John?
Go to SweetSpotTheBook.com. It'll take you to our website. You'll find it there. Or you can go to Amazon and put in the entire title, Sweet Spot, Confessions of a Golfaholic, and it'll pop right up.
Can't wait to finish reading it. Thanks
All
so
right.
much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, up next, Sherry Swanson shows us how to make a cool meal in minutes when Style returns. We'll be right back.